So Zonal did some research about what was happening to the average time that people were booking, dinners, whatever. And the average time came out at 6:12, which is quite early, 12
Yeah.
minutes past 6. So they looked further into it. And when they asked people why they weren't coming out later or why they were coming out earlier, something like, I think 30 odd percent on average, or 29% said they were coming out earlier because of safety. So this is about what operators have done to make their outlets safer, what they think about safety. Is it something they really need to be worried about? So it's all about this safety bit in the late night sector, particularly, and talking about how that 6 o'clock booking, which I'm surprised about, has impacted everybody. So it's a general conversation. This is the Zonal webinar into late night safety in hospitality. And we have a great panel here. And I'd really like you to introduce yourself, starting with you, Sarah. Tell me a bit about you and your business and late night generally.
So, hello, excuse already my cold. I apologise. I will go on to mute every time I cough. So I founded and run Nightcap, was started during COVID, at a time when obviously everything was shut, actually, going through the boom that came after COVID, where frankly you could have sold margaritas out of a wheelie bin, I think, and people would have come. And now, fast forward, we are nearly 5 years in, not quite, but sort of 4.5 years in. So we've really seen a big shift in the way that consumers are behaving. So and safety is one of the most important things. We launched a really big campaign a couple of years ago to make sure that people felt safe in our bars, and we actually have a skew towards women in our bars, and it was very important to us that everybody felt safe. So I'm very excited.
What have you got now, Sarah?
We have 44.
Great. Thank you. Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben McLaughlin. I'm Chief Operating Officer for BOXPARK. For those who don't know, we have 6 different sites, predominantly in London, but up in Liverpool as well. And it's a food hall-led business with a large amount of events and bars across it. A bit like Sarah, we've sort of had this sort of evolution over certainly post-COVID. We actually were selling margaritas out of a wheelie bin back in too, which was great. But the times have changed, and I think there's been a movement, and so it's going to be interesting today to talk around that shift in not only fact but also perception, which are sort of 2 big factors of people coming out. So excited to talk about that today.
Great, thank you, Sylvia.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me on. So my background is I sort of cut my teeth in hospitality, but then I've ended up sort of really carving a niche in sort of partnership working, and I do a lot of project work with local authorities and police and businesses, and lots of other local partners such as street pastors and business improvement districts, but they all centre around creating a more attractive nighttime environment. And for me, that tends to have a big part of that is around safety. I also set up a community interest company to support Ask for Angela. Having seen that develop over the last 10 years or so, I felt it needed something behind it to help businesses do that well. So we set that up a couple of years ago, and I also run the National Best Bar Accreditation Scheme. Great,
fantastic. I'll start with you then. Just tell me what you've seen happen in that late night economy since COVID. Let's pick COVID as last 5 years. What have you seen has happened in that late night sector?
Prior to COVID, we used to have these sort of safety schemes and people were accredited under different things, Best Barn being one of them, but there are others as well. And I think when we used to try and market those, when we used to try and promote the fact that people were operating a safety scheme, Ask for Angela, whatever it was, the public kind of were a bit like, so what? But actually, I think that COVID has made people realise that you walk into one place and it had a queue management system, it had people were wearing masks, you knew the direction that you had to go to in the toilet and things, and there was table service, and there were other places that weren't doing it so well. And I think it really was a very kind of clever visual way of representing that actually the way a place is managed really matters. And I think that's one positive for me that's come out of COVID, that I think people understand that actually, you know, you can feel safe in a place that's well managed. So that's a real opportunity for the industry, I think. But then I think the other thing that happened since COVID, which has been very difficult, is around the sort of spiking narrative. And I say that because I understand it is something that's very frightening, and that there are people that are spiked, but I also understand that it's a very complex picture in terms of the crime itself. And I think it's had a massive impact on people's feelings of safety. And I'm not saying I endorse one view or another, but perhaps maybe that's the concern about spiking, maybe sort of slightly larger than the picture that we're seeing around the actual facts. And so that is, I think, sort of making people feel worried about coming out.
Right, thank you. Sarah, what's happened with late night over the last 5 years?
Oh, a lot, but let's keep it to safety. It's really interesting listening to that, because we have seen, of course, if just looking at the stats, right, let's just pick up on what Sylvia was talking about and spiking, for example. You know, just the number of recorded spiking cases that have been registered over the last few years has increased, right? And I think on the one hand, I think that's actually we've done a great job in highlighting it. I think that's important, and we've made it so that it is more reportable. I still think it is an underreported crime, actually. But it is more prevalent. You know, I've got teenage children that are now of drinking age, girls as well as boys, and they go out and they're very aware of it. We weren't when we were younger. It was not something that we really talked about. I was spiked when I was 20. Luckily, nothing serious happened as a result of it, but was unquestionably spiked. And it's only much further down the path that I looked back and realized that I had definitely been spiked. Whereas now I think we're very aware of it, and we talk about it. One of the things that we have to do, one of the things that we have in late night now that I don't think we had so much 10, 20 years ago is CCTV. And I think that's really critical. I know certainly as an operator, it is really important to us to be able to have CCTV in all of our venues to cover all corners, so that when somebody does come to us and says, we were spiked, or we believe that we were spiked, or we believe that something took place, we're actually able to look straight away to be able to assist in any police investigation. Did that take place? When did it take place? Who did they do it? And we have all of that evidence. I think that's really important. I think it's really important to highlight us in a venue in a way that we didn't used to do, that we're on this, we're looking at it, we have got eyes everywhere. Our Safer Together campaign, which highlights 5 key points that we are all over in our venues. And of course, one of them is we make sure that we do have spiking kits if anybody wants to check it. And actually, as a group, and it's probably the same actually for you, Ben, we've not seen a rise in cases being reported within the venues. And I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that we really highlight everywhere that we're watching this. We want to make sure that you're okay. We have safeguarding kind of officers. I mean, that doesn't sound very cool, does it? Safeguarding officers. We have people that are trained within the venue on every shift that are there to be able to help everybody. And I think as operators, we are more and more proud to be able to talk about this, but realize just how important it is. You know, one of the things for me that the big part of the Safer Together campaign was actually to encourage our customers to stick together. You know, how often do you see groups of mates where one of them's too drunk and can't get in? And we will not turn a single person away from the door ever. We will not allow somebody to go home on their own. that's really, really important to me, because I think that's when it goes wrong. When you've got mates that like just put their friend either in a taxi on their own, or just say, oh, well, yeah, they go, oh, I'll be fine, and leave them on their own, and the rest of them go off and have a really great night. You know, that's something that we don't talk about often enough. And we are really vigilant about that. We will never kick a single person out. We'll never turn a single person away from the door, male or female, actually, because they need to go home in a group. You need to look after that friend. And if there's one message I tell my kids, it's that, actually, you have to stick together on a night out, because when you've had too much to drink, there are just people around that are not good people, that will not look after you, and you've got to make sure that somebody gets home safely. So I think, in terms of safety, what have I seen over the years? We talk about it a lot more. And as operators, we've got more safeguards in place
than you had 5 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
Ben?
Yeah, I think well, 100% agree with everything that Sarah said. I think it's almost a longer exacerbation of that problem. So I think one of the big challenges, we've lost critical mass. So if you think about going out nightclubbing or certainly in late night 20 years ago, let's say, if we're potentially old enough to remember that far back, but 20 years ago, the streets were teeming with people, the nightclubs were full, and there was a safety in numbers of people around. And I think that helped a little bit. And then coupled with that is once these areas are really busy, you then see a much higher policing presence, you see a much higher city warden, city pastor, whatever that might be within that town centre, helping to sort of add that air of security and safety within those measures. I think the challenge that we've now got is, as we've seen some of the decline of late night and the high streets, where we're having that problem is now policing resources less on the streets. Town centres are reducing their sort of footprint. So some areas, are still absolutely thriving. I'm sure Sarah will say if you go to Cardiff on a Saturday night, that's probably not a problem. There's probably plenty of cops and rangers around. But in general, that safety in numbers has gone a little bit, and therefore that means as operators, we have to become much more, the focus has shifted, as Sarah said, onto what are we doing as part of that collective? Because before it was sort of, we were handing off and it was all sort of okay. And it was a big ecosystem, and one venue was handing to another venue, and there was some police in between and everything was fine. And now actually, venues can be relatively siloed. And therefore you've got this duty of care for your guests past the barrier of where they were before, where you probably were a little bit blasé about it 20 years ago, that now you can't afford to be. And so it really has come back into the spotlight, as Sarah said, and it is now everything that we do needs to be centered around that guest safety. And one of the things that Sylvia and I were chatting about prior to the call was it's perception of safety as much as it is safety. And I think if you think back, if I thought back 20 years now to the way we run our venues, people would hate coming to our venues because they would think, oh, I can see security everywhere. It feels like they're ramming these messages down my neck. Oh, it's not a safe place to be because they have to have loads of security on. And actually, I think the full flip is now that even when we have quite a lot of security on, I've never once seen a customer complaint in the last 5 years saying there's too many security, that feels unsafe. That entire flip of the narrative now. So it used to be venue with security, there's going to be a problem. Now it is almost the other way around. And so because of the nature of some of our venues and because of the size and scale, we have security 24 hours a day. And obviously that ramps up and ramps down, but it's there to give that continual perception of safety, even at a time when it's particularly not unsafe. We want guests to be sort of feeling that. And I think the guest is almost looking for that in this time. Certainly, as Sylvia said, post-COVID, people have got a slightly different mindset of what they're looking for from their activities and their times out. And so therefore, yes, we want to do everything we can do to make them safe, but we also want them to feel it's safe. And, if we just have to pay for 2 security guards to walk around and they do nothing all day, brilliant, job done. That'd be the best possible scenario that we could have, because they're there to, it's about overt security now, and that's what Sarah said of it's posters in toilets, it's TV screens showing highlighting that there's bag thieves around, there's people who are bad actors looking to for drink spike and keep your stuff safe. Make sure you're looking after yourself. Make sure you're chatting to the security guards. We've got welfare officers. All these bits and pieces are almost now baked into successful venues, I think, of where people are feeling safe. Because I think we're going to talk around a time shift of people looking to come out slightly earlier with a view of safety, but I think they're also looking to find venues where there is safety in numbers and they feel like they are being treated like the number one guest.
Right. Sylvia, what have you seen operators do to make their venues feel safer?
Well, I think Sarah and Ben have talked a lot about that. And I think one of the things I've noticed very much is where, you know, in the past, security and safety measures tended to be things that were perhaps conditions on licenses and things to sort of align with around, you know, responsibilities that were put on venues. I think there's been a lot more voluntary measures put in place and a lot more promotion of the different things that venues are doing. So I think that outward messaging of, you know, we're a safe venue and these are the things that we do to keep you safe has been really helpful to, you know, reassure people that it's a safe place to come out. I think also there's a lot more, you know, we see people looking for things like a way of getting an independent mark of safety, sort of showing that, you know, there's lots of different, as I say, initiatives that you can get involved in. And a lot of sort of local authorities are running schemes, and you know, business uptake is generally really good with that because they want to show that partnership working, but also it's a really great way of having that sort of independent mark of, you know, we've done this initiative with the council and we've been checked and all the rest of it. So I think that's really great. Schemes like Ask for Angela, I think they have taken off hugely. I think because it's such a simple idea. And the other thing I think that's really great is that one of the messages that's coming out from the industry now is actually it's around, you know, if you feel unsafe for any reason, we're here. We're a kind of, it's almost like there's an additional layer between, you know, the blue light services and the guest, because if that guest is in trouble for any reason, even if, say, for example, they've voluntarily taken something, you know, the message is, you know, we're not here to judge, we're here to help, and, you know, come to speak to us, and it doesn't, you know, we won't involve anybody else unless it's necessary or you ask us to. So I think there's kind of a bit of a different holistic approach to safety, and it's yeah, it's really innovative, and I think, you know, taking on a lot of responsibility as well, which is challenging for businesses, but it's reassuring for the customers as well.
Ben, you talked about security and in terms of what you're doing to help people feel safe. What other things are you doing?
I think Sarah's touched on our bulk of stuff there, but one of the key parts is the training is more prevalent and more available than it ever was before, and so things like wave training now is commonplace across the sector. So welfare vulnerability training through our teams, and, you know, down into the grassroots teams, and it is empowering, you know, Joe behind the bar who's, you know, 18, fresh out of uni, working a bar shift, to be able to feel comfortable if someone does come up and say, oh, hey, you know, whether it's Ask for Angela or whether it's just, oh, this is a bit weird, or actually being able to spot those signs without that person, because whilst Ask for Angela gives that brilliant shorthand availability to go, and if someone wants to alert it, part of it from our side is proactiveness of actually trying to spot somebody who maybe isn't able to do that, and seeing where they get to. So that is, you know, certainly at peak, and it is monitoring who's going to the toilets, when, where, is everybody voluntarily in that space. You know, what are we doing around busy bars and busy dance floors to make sure that everybody looks like they're actually there, you know, they're voluntarily enjoying themselves time. And so I think it's that proactiveness across our entire team. So it's not just the general manager or the security teams, it's empowering all of those bartenders, floor staff, barbacks, as they're moving around the venues, to be keeping that eye on stuff. And there is more and more of that training available. And it's, you know, it's I think, as we talked around that diminished resource, so as there are potentially less police officers around, there are less support workers, it's how can we make sure that all of our eyes and all of our ears are working on site at the same time, and widening that net of responsible people who are able to sort of help within there. It leads into, do they feel safe at work? That's ultimately going to be the test, is, do our teams feel safe wanting to come to work? Do they feel that if something does, you know, bad does happen, how will we deal with it? You know, we see that certainly on some of our big event days. If you think about you know, Wembley, where we might have 2,500 people in the venue ahead of a busy stadium day or one of our own events, and actually there it can be quite an intimidating environment if you're on a bar and there's 2,000 people staring you down, and you're you know, fresh out of uni youngster working one of your first bar shifts. It can be an intimidating position, and actually part of that safety is for those guys as well. So we want to make sure everybody feels comfortable to say, this is not right, this needs to get addressed, this needs to get challenged. And as Sarah said, we will work on a zero tolerance to that as well. So you know, if one of our team says, we believe that has happened, we will deal with that as an actual fact, and we will you know, we'll take care of that straight away. So I think having all of those guys' eyes and ears is super important to us as well.
I actually think what you were saying then, Ben, is that I think that happens more than anything in the bars, is our staff, because they are so well trained in this area, it's always much more proactive. I think the majority of cases are our staff actually almost intervening, seeing a situation and taking somebody to the side. That's great training, actually. And you know, everybody, and I think you're right. I think there's a real sense of pride actually in the teams when they know that they've really helped somebody out in a way that possibly, you know, wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have been helped out in other situations. But I think, I do think being able to spot something is really critical as part of the training.
And Sarah, do you see, as this researcher said, that people are coming out earlier, are booking earlier? Do you see that impact?
I mean, there's absolutely no doubt the data is there. Fact, people are coming out earlier. I'm interested with the research in saying that a lot of it's safety related. I think some of it might be safety related, and I think everything that we've just talked about is critical and is part of that. But actually, I think a lot of it is also a change in habit. I think a lot of it is what came out of COVID. It's also that people are going out slightly less frequently and therefore are going out earlier and longer. So Saturdays are just bigger than they ever were. It's not, people are not going out, you know, later and people are going out earlier on Saturday and then staying out later as well. We're really seeing that across all of our venues, actually. I think that there are pockets of the UK where you will see a shift because of safety, and I think Shoreditch is one of them. I think Birmingham City, also central Birmingham, is having some issues as well with safety and a lot of reported crime. But actually what we're finding is it's not so much that it affects sales, it affects the number of security that you have to have and the number of people that are out on the streets. And you see that it's a very small area, actually. Birmingham is very small area, but you can see it, you know, but everybody's on the most important money that you spend every week is on your security team and your door team in Birmingham. And you wouldn't say that about a lot of other parts of the UK. So yes, I think it's skewed, but I think ultimately this shift is about the economy, actually.
Can I ask you a quick question about security, Sarah? Because that's the other thing that we noticed, and it was publicised quite widely, wasn't it? Around a lot of people left kind of late night security for, you know, standing on the door of Tesco's, or just, you know, decided that they didn't want to do that anymore. And how challenging is it for you as a business to get that consistency of, you know, door staff that does understand all those things that you mentioned earlier, and kind of, you know, can be a partner in your wider team rather than just being sort of quite a transient person?
Really hard. I think getting your security right, if you have to remember that security is it's often the first human interaction. They might have gone through some kind of booking process, but it's the first human interaction with your business and with your brand and with your venue. Really difficult to get. A lot of security might be great at safety, but they're also sales prevention officers. You know, they might not let somebody in when actually what are you talking about? There's loads of room, let them in. And it's a great crowd. It's very, very, I think it's one of the hardest things to get right, actually, is the security team. You know when you've got it right, you know when it's working, and you hold on to them, you treat them well, you put them through your training, even if they don't necessarily directly, they're not necessarily directly employed by us in all venues. But it's a very, very difficult thing to get right, because somebody, like I say, who's great at the safety side might not be so great as that first smile, that welcome, please come into our venue. So you often need to put a host on the door as well as having a security person on the door, so that you get that blend. But it's difficult.
Ben, is that your experience too, that it's difficult?
There's not enough hours in the day for me to answer that question.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a perennial problem of old. It exacerbated post-COVID 12 billion% because we lost a lot of good SIA to other industries at the back end of it. And so we went through 18 months of absolute colossal pain beyond all belief. And we're out the other side of the colossal pain. We're just in the day-to-day pain now. But it's making sure that you know, you're working with the right people that your general managers can engage with, and that they, you know, that they believe are best for, you know, guest overall safety and experience. It's very difficult, very, very difficult, but it's just another challenge within that.
Is safety then, or does safety have a potential to be a brand differentiator?
I'd say it's almost, yeah, 100%. It's almost a given. I would suggest now that if somewhere is deemed to be unsafe, that, you know, they will fall by the wayside without fail. And businesses will over-index to make sure that if they do have an issue, that it's seen to be dealt with, you know, accordingly, and that safety stays at the heart. You know, there's a couple of big venues that have had a couple of big incidents over the last couple of years, and have worked very, very hard to say, actually, we will continue to increase our safety, and we will continue to make sure that we've learned from this and drive through, because they know that guests will, you know, will vote with their feet and not go there, because there's a plethora of places to go to, and they want to go places where they feel safe.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a qualifier now. I don't think you don't stand apart by being all over safety and putting it at the absolute heart and soul of your business culture and your team culture and your training culture. I think it's a qualifier. And actually, I think one of the really big points as well is, as we talked about earlier, your team it starts with your team. Do your team feel safe in the workplace? That's the starting point. And then the training and everything that comes with that is about your customers feeling safe. And I honestly think it's a basic qualifier. I don't think this makes you stand out as being somebody that does brilliant stuff. You've absolutely got to do it to be in our industry.
Yeah, I think it's almost that you stand out if you don't.
Correct. Exactly as Ben's just said.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
And a bit like Sylvia said, of, you know, we used to only do safety by license conditions back in the day. If we were told to, we did it, and if we didn't, we didn't. Now going into a licensing is actually pretty easy, because you've already generally offered up almost everything, because you're actually going to do it anyway, because it's expected. It's just part of how we operate now. It's almost baked in.
How much, I didn't have this question as written down, but how much does the industry work together? And does it generate ideas that way, and thoughts that way, and innovation that way, particularly in terms of tech? How much do you work together on this and bring new ideas?
I've got a short thought on that, which is from sort of like 20 years ago, like I say, my background at the Business Improvement District in Nottingham, I think there was very much a culture of, you know, this is my venue and that's your venue, and, you know, and but and so there wasn't so much interest in inter-venue working, but I think that's completely changed. And I think everybody understands that if you've got a bad operator locally, then it's not going to be good for anybody. And so, you know, actually working together to bring everybody up to the same standards and to share best practice, and to, you know, I see a lot of, you know, pub watches where a venue that's got fantastic safety protocols might give a presentation and give some inspiration to some of the other operators there. And there's a bit of that going on, but I'm sure Sarah and Ben have got lots more information than me. But I think it's getting better, and it's come on leaps and bounds in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I would say that we are, as an industry, extremely collaborative. I think we're very open, we're very, very friendly, and everybody wants to look after each other. I think also the crisis, and I will call it a crisis, that the industry has seen over the last 2.5, 3 years, and continues to see, actually, only brings us all closer together. And I think that, you know, when as an industry, we're being hit hard by a lot of things that are outside of our control and not our doing, and we're still doing everything that we possibly can to make it work. I think you see a very united front from an industry. I mean, we saw it in COVID like nowhere else. I mean, it was extraordinary. I was on a WhatsApp group with sort of founders and CEOs and MDs of businesses across the country. It was, everybody stood by each other. You know, we shared ideas, shared contacts, shared the latest negotiation on something. You know, everybody wanted everybody to succeed. And I think we are in that same position today, where we don't want to see more places close. We want to see more people succeed. So I think we'll do whatever we possibly can to help our neighbours, always.
So if you have, Ben, a brilliant new idea or a brilliant piece of technology in terms of helping your customers feel safe, and it works, do you immediately share that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's been a wholesale change in the way we approach it in general. So I'm probably doing 3 different talks this week. I've no idea why, but somebody had asked me to be on 3 different talks. And 10 years ago, that it just wasn't whether it be webinars, whether it be panel talks, whether it be things, occasionally you might go to something that Peter was organizing and you might hear somebody speak. But now everybody is so, so open to sharing best practice, sharing ideas, talking around stuff. Same with the Martin's Law stuff, being able to we're in the trenches together of all understanding what does that going to look like, talking through those bits and pieces, talking through how do we address spiking was a great, period of time where we got together to talk around how can we do this better, how can we consult on this, and the likes of, Kate from UKH bringing people together, Mike bringing NTA, and those different facets. There's more opportunity for us all to talk now than there ever was back in the day, and it was, and I think it's, sensational that it's open now, and that it's not just, hi, this is my train set, keep away from it. Obviously, everybody wants their business to be successful, but we want that critical mass. If late night gets better as a whole, everybody gets better as a whole. So, yeah, and I think technology also there, as you alluded to, Anne, is getting better and better as time goes on across every element of our business. And so it's almost self-propagating itself through the industry, because if we do something brilliant, by the time we've sorted it out with that tech provider, they've already sold it to three other venues.
Yes.
Sometimes annoyingly, if it's for commercial game. But tech is moving everything on, and it is sort of raising the bar of everybody across the board. And I don't think anyone's particularly secretive about it, because we want to be giving better guest experience. I think there is, 90% of people understand that the better we do it, the more people want to come back out, the more we can fix hospitality, the better we all do ultimately for the greater good.
Great. Last question then to the 3 of you. If you sort of 2 or 3 key messages for the people listening to this webinar, watching the webinar, what would those 2 or 3 key messages be about safety? Sarah, start with you.
I think communicate. I think it is about making sure that we continue to talk about it. It's not, that we've always felt that there's this sort of fine balance, as we talked about earlier. If you have, do you have too many security, too many posters, too many, if you say, oh, we've got spiking kits, do people think that they get spiked in our venues? There's this whole sort of, actually, exactly as Ben said earlier, nobody's ever complained about us doubling down on security. So I think, make sure that we look after our customers, we communicate with them, we also empower them. It's not just all on us. It is, the Safer Together campaign that we've done and is in all of our bars is about looking after each other as well. And that's really, really important message, that we don't leave each other on our own. We will do all that we can, but also we as friends have a responsibility to our mates when we're out for a night out. We will do everything we can in venue, and we will do everything we can when somebody leaves the venue. But ultimately, you've got to look after each other as well.
Yeah. Sylvie? Sarah?
Thank you. Yes, so, I guess mine are number one, safety and training and that sort of thing. You don't need a big head office or a big budget to do that. There's lots of free resources and free ideas and examples out there, because I think we've got some fantastic operators on the call that have got multiple venues, but there are a lot of independent places out there that might not have the resources behind them to think that they can train all of their team or operate some of these schemes. But there's often free ways of getting support, including Ask Franja and others. Another one is thinking about engaging with local partners and encouraging them to help with the safety agenda. So Ben talked about bids as well, but I think that's a really important one for me. If you can go to your local bid and say, look, I've heard about this scheme, or, I'm going to say Best Barn again, because obviously I'm a big ambassador of that. But if a bid wants to set up Best Barn, we provide that free of charge, because it's funded by the drinks industry. So it's a really great way of bids then understanding how their hospitality operators operate and improving that partnership. And that, again, in turn will come up with some other ideas. So, for example, Nottingham bid, through running Best Barn On, they came up with this idea about a safe space pledge, and they offer, a lot of venues are signed up to the safe space pledge, and that kind of came about through the partnership working that Best Barn On encouraged. So I think, talk to your wider partners locally and see how you can work together to bring some of these things into fruition.
Right. Ben?
I go back to my visibility points as the first one again, of just doing all that we can to make sure our guests know that safety measures are in place and they feel safe, sort of what Sarah said. I think where we've added in defibs, and so we've got signage on site that says defibs available here, is luckily something that we haven't had to use. But you know, a lot of positive comments around, oh, that's amazing, that's very good, hypo kits, all these sorts of things, and making sure that we, you know, the guests know it's there, because actually they know they're in a space where they can come out and have a great time, come what may, and we can help and assist them. I think that leads into, certainly from a management point of view, is planning for both scenarios, planning for when it goes well and planning for when it doesn't go well. You know, we run a lot of large events, so they have very detailed planning, but actually just what is Tuesday lunchtime, Tuesday evening, and making sure that our teams know what the plan is should this happen. Not just should someone ask for Angela, but actually what happens if I spot this? What happens if I notice that's the thing? How do I make sure that happens? So it's not just, it's very visible, it's also practically going to be completed as and when something, the worst does happen, or we need to use that. So sticking to that plan, I think. And then the one thing I preach a lot about is that the only person that's more important than the guest safety is your own personal safety. So I always try and start the stuff with, you know, before you're assessing anything else, is your personal safety in danger? That's the most important thing. And so therefore, leaning into things that look like costly things that actually will end up being completely uncostly is body cameras for teams, certainly for SIA teams, things like that, making sure that you have a clear policy of this is going to be on at all times. I'm going to document it for my own safety as much as for my guest safety, and making sure that we're, you know, we can't protect other people if we've put ourselves in harm's way. So making sure that we, you know, there's clear protocols, we've got a plan and we know how we're going to enact it. And then we start with our own personal safety, and then we look after everybody else after that point.
Thank you very, very much to the three of you for a really fascinating conversation. And I think it'd be extremely thought-provoking for a lot of operators watching this, and there'll be ideas and thoughts that they get that they need to implement, whether they're small or whether they're large. And what I get from all three of you is a huge sense of concern and care for the people that you have in your teams, and that if you put your teams first, you train them, you look after them, and you make sure that they feel that way, then that goes a huge way towards helping customers feel safe as well. So I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I've learned a lot, and you've been tremendous. So thank you very much indeed for doing it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you as always, Anne.
Thank you.
Great.